All right. Well, welcome everybody. We're going to be talking about the power of collaboration, talking about communicating and interacting, engaging with elected officials. While we're waiting for folks to continue coming in, just to let everyone know that you are in the listen-only mode. The way to communicate with us would either be through the chat or the question and answer box, which would be at the bottom of your screen as participants. If you need to switch back and forth, bad connections or things, there is also a phone-in function that you can find down there if you need to call in. Type your questions in the Q&A anytime during the presentation. I'll be watching those and curating those. And today's webinar will be just a little different. We'll have a little presentation from Kelly, but then it's mostly going to be a discussion. So we appreciate those questions coming in at any time. We want to help you have a better relationship with your elected officials, whether they be in your community at the state level or even at the federal level. And so looking forward to the conversation today. If for some reason we don't get to all the questions or you have questions afterwards, my email is there at the bottom of the screen. Feel free to reach out to us. And as normal, let me just double check that we are recording this so that this will be posted later. And we'll put this on our YouTube channel so you can view it later if you aren't able to participate the entire time or have others that want to see the presentation. I want to do a little commercial real quick for our next quarterly workshop. It's on March the 7th, and it is the art of fundraising and the 3 R's of volunteer engagement. And we are going to be in Liberty, Missouri for that. Just finishing up our marketing materials on that now. You'll find it on our website to do registration in the next day or so. But hope that you'll join us. This is a topic that we hear a lot about when we're in our communities. Of course, fundraising keeps us moving as an organization and helps us accomplish all those big, great things that we want to do.
You're good, I think.
And then also the 3 R's of volunteer engagement. We always need that people power. And so ask you to go ahead and mark your calendar for those. All right, Gayla, I think we're ready to go. And I see the senator has joined us this morning, so very excited about that. Gayla, do you want to kick us off?
Sure, I would love to. Happy New Year, everyone. Everybody excited about 2024? We are here at our office, so hopefully you guys are too. It's going to be a great year, and we're part of it, right? We're going to make it great. So we're really excited that Kelly could join us. She's been a day-to-day to know, because sometimes we get something in the mail that says we may have to, sit on a jury somewhere. So we are glad that we got Kelly to join us from Main Street America this morning. Just a little bit about Kelly. She is the Director of Government Relations. Kelly leads Main Street America, work to uplift the role of Main Street organizations to policy decision makers. She works alongside MSA's 44 Main Street state, city, and county coordinating programs and defending and growing their programs and support for MSA. Great network of Main Street programs and pushing for federal support for Main Streets. Prior to serving as Director of Government Relations, Kelly was the Manager of Education and Illinois Main Street Coordinating Program. So many of you all that are in the Main Street field know Kelly, and so we're really excited. We're always really, really excited in our coordinators meetings to have Kelly come and talk to us about what's going on at the federal level, and her work has just been fabulous since Kelly can really hone into this. Kelly has been, doing lots of different things for MSA. So we're really excited that her whole role is advocacy for MSA and everything that we're doing out in Main Street. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you, and Keith. Is this the time for me to kick off? Are we ready for some slides? Okay, great. Everyone, I'm very excited to be here today, and I'm really excited to also participate in conversation with Mayor Haas and Senator Carter as we get this going. But right now, I'm going to make that awkward moment where I turn to my slides. 1 second, please. Excellent. So we should be all set now. So we're here today to talk about collaboration. And I really loved the way that Keith and Gayla and the MMSC team phrased what we're talking about today, because sometimes when we think about advocacy, we think about it as David versus Goliath, that you're reaching out to somebody who is unreachable and it's a major challenge, and collaboration is a better way maybe to phrase and think about what we're doing here. We are building relationships and connecting with people on an ongoing basis to make sure that they know who we are, what we need from them, and how they can support us. And so that takes on a little bit of a different theme than how sometimes we think about advocacy overall, but they are the same and interconnected. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But again, just thank you to Missouri for having me here and for all of your attention today. So a little bit about what we're going to talk about. We want to talk about those strategies to connect, to build those relationships, but we're going to start with the why, because I think in this conversation we need to know, why is advocacy for your work and for Missouri's Main Streets so important? What can you do with it? And then we're going to break this into steps in the process. We're going to talk about how you initially reach out to elected officials, how you create a message and share that message specifically in meetings, because I know we're organizing for days at the Capitol. And then we're also going to talk about how we continue that relationship. It's not just a one-time event. You don't connect one day at an event in the state capitol and then say, okay, I'll come back next year and we'll reconnect again. You got to keep that going throughout the year. So we'll talk a little bit about how you bring that home. And I know Mayor Haas has some thoughts about that too. So when we get into conversation, we'll talk about that. But here's the why. What can you do with connecting and starting that conversation with elected officials that represent you? And it's important to think about it from a broad perspective. In the image here, you'll see the legislative requests of some of your colleagues out in New Mexico. Annually, they put together kind of their legislative requests. What are we asking for? And that's one element of it, into making that direct ask. But the other things that you can do is just educate your lawmakers, right? Create awareness about what it is that you do, what the mission of your organization is, why that's important to your community. You can also find solutions to your problems together. Sometimes we come with that direct, we want this from you, but we often find that when we get into conversations with elected officials, they might know what's going on in the government a little bit more than us and can help us actually, in a collaborative manner, address a problem a little bit differently than we might have thought about it. So we need to be open to that and really just think broadly about how we can solve problems. And you want to be able to make sure that you're also not just advocating for something that you need that's new, but making them understand what works for you and maintain those resources. You already have certain programs that are helpful to what's happening in Main Street, so don't ignore the need to keep emphasis and energy on things that you've already said work for you, right? If you know something that's great that's happening, tell them about it. They need to know whether or not a program policy is effective. And if it is, that's a good thing to share. And you can also kind of build resources with other groups. Keith mentioned that there aren't just Main Street folks that have joined the call today. There are some other groups. And often when we're going to talk to an elected official, they want to know, how do other groups feel about this too? It's not just about us, it's also about how it impacts the whole community. So through our advocacy, we can build partnerships. We can create organizational capacity through coalitions with other groups. And I want to emphasize here, this is not something that you guys are doing in Missouri in a vacuum, right? Main Street programs across the country are taking action to support the work that they're doing. And it's important to understand that you're not alone, that this is absolutely the type of work that Main Street programs should be engaged in, reaching out to lawmakers and elected officials on a regular basis. Again, whether that's at the state capitol or in your own community. But here you can see images from last year, your colleagues in Alabama, in Louisiana, and in a lot of other states across the country. There are Capitol Hill days. Folks are hosting in-district tours with elected officials and just meeting up to have a conversation about what Main Street is. And it takes a little bit of time to build that muscle for advocacy. So if you are starting from square one and not really have those relationships in place, and you haven't been doing this on a regular basis, don't worry about it. We need to just take one step at a time. But know that there are folks, throughout the Main Street network who are also doing this, also raising this. And this should be part of your regular leadership of your program. Something that you guys are talking about, regularly at your board meetings, thinking about how you integrate advocacy in your organization's work on an ongoing basis, so that when you're reaching out to an elected official, they know who you are. When you have a request, they can help you. When you have something that's urgent, you already have the relationship in place. We don't want to start building a relationship when we need something. We want to start building a relationship when we just want to keep our elected officials abreast of what's going on. So here we can start talking about, just in general, what is advocacy? Again, as I was talking about at the beginning, sometimes we think about advocacy as something that we're doing that is making that direct ask. And that is a part of advocacy, but that's really where you get into lobbying, right? And there's a specific definition for that. But advocacy can be thought of so broadly, and it helps to make sure that when you're thinking about the other activities that your organization does on an ongoing basis, that you're kind of thinking and casting that broader net of advocacy, so you can see where you can be creating, laying some groundwork and creating wins for yourself as an advocate, right? Giving yourself that, like, yes, I advocated today. You are already an advocate. So advocacy can be education, right? Just explaining what Main Street is to an elected official. That happens all the time. You're doing it regularly. You have a website. That is an advocacy tool. It is an educational component. It can be research, right? If you have data that helps make the case for your Main Street program, your reinvestment stats, changes in your vacancy rates downtown, the amount of the number of buildings that you've activated space in, the number of new businesses that have started in your community. Those are all ways to communicate the impact of your Main Street program. And when you are posting on your social media the impact of your Main Street program, when you receive your annual accreditation and you have your stats, that is a way to include your lawmakers, your elected officials. Are you sharing those stats with them? Are they able to maybe reiterate those stats by saying, hey, this is what the Main Street program has accomplished in our community? Those are really good ways for you to just build that groundwork, make that relationship, for them to know that you're an impactful organization before you come to the table saying, I need this program from you. Coalition and relationship building is a huge part of laying the groundwork. I work at the federal level, and I think a lot of my time is just in sharing what we want with other organizations so they can help us carry our message, right? If we are working in a vacuum and not with other partners at the local, state, or federal level, we're going to come to the table as a singular entity. So when you're making that case, you also want to make that case to other organizations. Does your county economic development organization know what's important to Main Street? Think about how they could also be an advocate for you, as part of how you build that broader case for the Main Street program. It's not just about the elected official, it's also about the other organizations that are out there in the space. Media outreach and PR. I just want everybody to be thinking on a regular basis, when you have a great win, when you have something in your community that's really special, or when you have something that you just want to highlight, how are you using local media, state media to help that? I saw a great piece on local news in Illinois the other day for a Main Street program opening kind of an incubator space for small businesses. And that is so helpful because we can repackage that. Not only you create the media piece, but you can send it on to people. You can tag an elected official in a post or send an email saying, hey, why don't you just see this piece about the great work that we're doing in downtown? Those are all forms of advocacy. And you're already doing some of this stuff. So just let's use it in a way that we're connecting with elected officials as well. As a Main Street program, and we need to be conscientious that this is an election year, right? There are ways that you can be active in that space without taking partisan positions, without endorsing candidates. You don't want to endorse candidates as an organization, but you can do things like helping organize civic engagement activities, whether that's voter registration, candidate forums, and we can talk about that a little bit more in discussion if it's interesting to you, but there are ways that you can promote Main Street as a public concern through having that civic engagement without necessarily taking action that would be harmful to your organization in a political manner. So think about how you can help people through organizing. And then the final piece of that puzzle, as I talked about from the top, is that lobbying component. This is all forms of advocacy. And then you get to that lobbying component, which is asking an elected official to take a direct stand, endorsement, a support for a specific issue. Until you've gotten to that point, you really haven't taken action that is considered lobbying. So you want to be cognizant that there's so much in relationship building and collaborating with elected officials and others in the community before you get to that, making that direct ask. And so really, when you're thinking about advocacy, how your organization is doing advocacy, think about all of those things and count them, right, towards your advocacy goals. But then there is that point where you really specifically need to reach out and make connections with elected officials in a very meaningful way. And you have to do a little bit of backgrounding and research to understand how to connect with elected officials. I think sometimes, especially when we're talking about state level advocacy and certainly local advocacy, you know your elected official, right? You probably grew up with them. You maybe went to high school together. They're your cousin's sister. Wait, that's also your cousin. They're your cousin's boyfriend, right? Like there's so many ways that you could be already connected to elected officials, and that's great. I also want you to keep in mind that as elected officials, there are other ways to think about their work, even if you know them, right? So consider the fact that you can do a little bit of research to understand what their actual positions on issues are. Even if it's somebody that you play golf with on a regular basis, you might not know exactly how to approach them as an elected official. And using the opportunity of a day at the Capitol that's coming up, that's a great way to get started too if you haven't reached out before. But on a regular basis, you want to know who your elected officials are, who represents you, and do a basic bit of research about who they are, what their positions are on issues that might be important to you. You can often do that by just Googling somebody, right? Find their positions on the state's legislator website, probably has a voting record for their history on certain issues that might be important to you. It's a great way to get started. I want to highlight, though, the quote from one of your colleagues at Main Street, Clovis, New Mexico. New Mexico has done some great advocacy, and Lisa's a fantastic advocate. And one of the things that just to keep in mind is folks that are in positions as elected officials, they choose to do this because they want to help you, right? So sometimes we get nervous to reach out and make that connection with somebody who's an elected official, but the reason that they chose to serve, put their name on the ballot, collected endorsements, money, took all their time to do this was because they want to make a difference in their community. You are a help to them to do that. You're going to partner with them to help improve your community by telling them how they can help you, what the issues are that are affecting downtowns. That's just a good reminder to take away some of that element of nervousness that we can sometimes have when reaching out. People weren't elected because they wanted to deny you access to programs and services. They want to help you, right? So that's a really good way to think of it. If you're not connected to the elected official, if you don't know them, you don't know how to connect to them, a great way is to think about how your board might be connected. You all have other people in your organization. If you're the executive director, you have a board who probably came to the board because they want to support you, support the goals of Main Street. And they probably are involved in other ways with the community. And that could also mean that they might have a connection to the person that you need to seek out, right? So if you aren't connected to your state senator, you've never talked to that person before, you don't know how to connect with their office, but maybe your board chair plays pickleball with the state senator on a regular basis, you can say, hey, can you help me make that connection? How can we do this together? You want to use those connections with a little bit of tact and make sure that you're reaching out in a way that is effective. But if you work together with the person who has that connection, that's called grass tops connecting with elected officials. And it's an important tool. But we want to also think about how we message to elected officials. It's, there is a nuance and a way to talk and make sure that you're making the case for your organization. And I just want to make a note on that too. I've been in many situations where folks want to reach out to a member of Congress and you want to send a hard copy letter to that member of Congress. You want to be formal and you want to be represent your Main Street program well on letterhead, right? Just as a note, if you send a letter to Congress, it has to go to Ohio and be scanned for certain problematic powders that could be in that letter, right? They have to go through this whole process. It delays it by 2 weeks, and then it goes into a big pile in that member of Congress's office. It's okay to reach out by email. If you don't have the right email to reach out to, if you reach out to a congressman's email address, you're going to reach out to a dated example, but Senator Blunt at senate.gov, right? That email is not going to reach the senator. You want to find how you get that contact to the right place. Call the office first. Call the office and say, who's the best person for me to direct a request to for a meeting, or a direct request to for a tour of the district? The scheduler is the key person. They're going to help you. They're going to make sure that you get connected in the best way. So depending on what your request is, whether if it's at the congressional level, you want to make sure to do it this way. Find out who the best person to connect is. I can also help you. And then send that. It can vary. Of course, at state and local levels, the connections might be a little bit easier to make, but don't worry about necessarily being overly formal with that written piece. If you have that piece, it can also be sent as an attachment. Like, hello, we'd like to alert you to this opportunity to join us for an event. And then you can attach a formal letter that makes that invitation. And let's talk a little bit about what that message, when you're sending a message, you're writing that letter with a specific request. How can you do that? And I think this works for written communications as well as for communications verbally, right? You want to be thinking about key elements that you want to see in that message. You want to think about how you frame your messaging to an elected official. If you come to the table and set a tone initially of, this doesn't work for us and we're upset about it, you might take away the value of some of your communication with that elected official, right? People don't want to be approached initially with kind of fear and anxiety, and they want to be approached with, we want to tell you how you can help us in the downtown. The value of our program is so great. This is what we can do together, and this is how we collaborate. So think about a framing that's positive. Think about a framing that opens opportunity, and think about a framing that talks about the key issues that are in downtowns, right? And framing that message correctly is kind of thinking about how you also relate to relevant issues that are in the community. So we know that housing is a huge problem everywhere. We know that disaster preparedness and response is a huge issue everywhere. And we know that small businesses need support. And you can talk about why those issues are so important in your community, and then talk about what you can do about it. Share some data about your program. Did you know we have this many vacant spaces in our downtown, or our upper floor vacancy rate is primed to help with those housing needs? Share data about what you think you can do with that. And share a story. Most of the time we love using data. Data makes the case, right? We know that we have these housing needs. We know that there's a vacant space in an upper story, but tell the story of somebody who wants to live in that space, right? Connect it to an individual and say, business owner Joe in our community wants to convert that building so that he can increase his income and impact in the community. And we know that, we have residents ready to move into these spaces. If you connect it to a person who's in that community locally and their story, you're going to create this sense of shared values, and you're going to be able to connect more with the legislator in the way our brains work. Our brains receive data and we're like, cool, data, I understand that. But when our brains receive a story about how that might actually impact a human being that lives in our community, we connect on an emotional level, and it makes somebody more interested in what you're saying. And when you have that direct request, you want to propose a solution, right? If you have the ability to tell somebody, if you support the historic tax credit, we'll be able to have this outcome. That is so much better than saying, well, we have this problem and we want you to figure it out for us, right? Like I said, you want to be open to other solutions, right? When you're working with somebody in a collaborative manner, but you also, if you can give them something that they can do for you directly and tell them, you can do this, we need you to do this by, right? Then you're giving something that is just a basic action that somebody can take. And if you have a specific bill, make sure that you're always giving somebody a bill number. When you're talking to people and they don't know exactly what you want them to do and you're a little fluid with that, it can be a little bit difficult for them to take action. So many of you are involved in kind of setting up meetings with folks, and there's a general tone that I've found in when we go to Capitol Hill in DC and when we do meetings with state legislators, you only get so much time, right? And you want to be really thoughtful about how you're going to use that time. So think about how you can structure your meeting in advance. Before you go to a meeting, you want to plan it out a little bit. If you have multiple people, you want to make sure that each person has a speaking role. And you want to get into it with introductions. Make sure that you know who's in the room, especially if the legislator has other folks there or staff. Make sure that people introduce themselves and you take down those names. Educate your lawmaker on what the Main Street program does. And I find it's really effective to say, are you familiar with the work of our Main Street program? Many times you might get somebody, and I've had this happen to me several times, where people say, you guys are the ones that put on that great event in the downtown. And you can say, yes, we do fantastic events. And we also do this. We also support small businesses. We also are revitalizing vacant properties in the district. We're also, bringing X resources to support public space improvements, right? So use that opportunity to expand and reframe what they know about your program. Educate them. Make sure you tell your lawmaker about how you're utilizing the Main Street approach in your community, and connect your work to the statewide Main Street program when you're in that statewide meeting. I think this is important because when a member of the Missouri Main Street Connection staff, if Gayla or Keith wants to follow up later, they want to say, hey, you remember the community was in previously to talk about you about this program? And you want to connect those two things, right? If the local community is coming into the office, when somebody else follows up, you want to know you're part of that network. And be a listener in these meetings as well. Make sure that there's time for questions and discussion. Part of collaboration is you not just going in and giving your spiel and walking out, but you coming in and saying, hey, how can we work together? What do you need to know about us in order to support us? And finally, it is a really good idea, whether or not you have a direct ask, like, please support this bill. If you don't have that, it's still a really good idea to end a meeting with a legislator with an ask. Say, hey, can we have a tour of the district? The next time you're back in the district, can we grab a cup of coffee? Make an ask to end the meeting on a positive note that allows them to follow up with you. Okay, just a couple of things before and after you do meetings. If you are unsure about how you're going to communicate with the elected official, you don't know exactly how you're going to state your program's mission and go in and say, hi, this is who we are and what we do. Practice with other people, practice in front of a mirror, give them your little spiel. Make sure if you have multiple people that you're determining who is going to speak when. There's nothing like people talking over one another when making the case for something. It confuses people. Research those elected officials and make sure you have that leave behind. I think you all have for Capitol Hill meetings a document that Missouri Main Street has helped you with. It is super important. That's a one-pager to you. A lot of elected officials in offices call those leave behinds because they anticipate that you're going to leave them with a piece of paper that tells them a little bit about your program so they can reflect back on that later. Particularly if there's a staff member, the staff member can say, hey, remember this group? And here's the document. Very important to have that and to be able to give that to somebody. That's before you get to that visit. You have the meeting, What are you going to do right after the meeting? The meeting does not end when the meeting ends. The meeting ends maybe weeks following, right? When you're leaving, try to document your visit. As you're walking out the door, say, hey, can we grab it? Is it okay if we grab a quick selfie? You want to be able to get a little image of you meeting in that office so that you can post it on social media, so you can share it back in your newsletters, helps your community know how you're helping them. And it also maybe gives the elected official an opportunity to say, hey, we are supporting the Main Street program, right? And you want that mutual communication. Jot down notes. You want to really listen for key words that are said. You might not even understand them in the moment, but if there was something that the elected official honed in on, make a mental note of that and then try to jot down some notes as soon as you leave. Send a thank you note. Send that thank you note. You can send a hard copy thank you note. And a lot of people that like to write out thank you notes, and that's okay. But send one via email so that you can remind them about the impact of your meeting within the next couple of days, right? And if they asked you questions, follow up and make sure that you are answering those questions. It's okay in a meeting, and it's preferred in a meeting, that you don't try to speak about something you don't know. Follow up and give those notes as you go forward. And lastly, I'll leave you with some relationship building tips. Always good to invite elected officials to your events in your community, and vice versa, attend their events. That's a way to keep that relationship going. Follow each other on social media and news, and make sure also think about being like really flexible whenever you're working with elected officials. Their schedules change constantly. I know it was changing today for people that are here, so just make sure that you're constantly thinking about how to be accommodating. And then on the don't side, like, these are don'ts, but I just want to highlight the bottom line is take a deep breath, know you can do this, and let's focus on that last one. Don't become discouraged. Relationship building is a long-term process. So even if something doesn't go right, keep it going into the future so that you can come back to the table and reconnect with the legislator. I will leave it there. And I know we're going to go into conversation. So thank you for listening. Thank you, Keith.
Perfect. Thanks. Thank you, Kelly. Great information. And like you said, we're going to dive in with some questions. In fact, that's the part we're going to move into now with Senator Jill Carter and Mayor Dwayne Haas. We're going to introduce them quickly, ask them to just share a little bit more about themselves. Senator Carter, I don't know if we have video capabilities with you or not. We'd love to be able to see you if that is available, because we're going to start with you. Good morning, Senator Carter.
Good morning. I am trying to see if I can make this work. The signal is just spotty, so.
Gotcha. No problem. Well, while you work on that, I'm going to do a quick little introduction. Senator Jill Carter took the oath of office and was sworn in on January 4th, 2023, to serve the 32nd Senatorial District and represents the citizens of Jasper and Newton counties. A Granby resident for 36 years and a family farm operator, Senator Carter is a devoted wife, mother of 5, grandmother, and homemaker. Senator Carter, thank you for joining us this morning. Can you share a little bit more about your journey in becoming a senator for Southwest Missouri, and what drew you to that position?
I'd love to. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you all today. I have a passion for Main Street businesses and what goes on there, so it's just an absolute privilege to be here. One of the things that I think for me started me down this journey, if somebody would ask me if I would have been here 5 years ago, even a year and a half, 2 years ago, just prior to deciding to run, I would have laughed and told them there was no way. But I was somebody who was very passionate about my community, especially in regards to education. Education is kind of what started me down the path of being involved up here at the Capitol. And after being up here and that was about 12 years ago that I started to get involved. And that was simply because I was very invested in my kids' education, very invested in the school. And I had teachers coming to me talking about talking about some of the concerns they had in regards to what was going on with some of the education changes. And so I had to myself, well, why don't you go to the school board? Like, let's go to the school board. And they were fearful to do that. And so I said, well, I'll go to the school board for you. I mean, I'm just a mom with kids here, but I'm happy to step in the gap and do that. And then what happened after that was kind of the eye-opening moment for me was, even though the school board members and the superintendent shared the concerns, they were fearful of advocating contrary to the Department of Ed simply because they thought they would lose their accreditation and funding. And so I found myself back in that same position of trying to advocate just to raise awareness and to say, hey, we may have a problem. And that caused me to start coming to the Capitol, which led to a decade-long journey of coming up here on and off just for other issues that you saw were a concern to people. And so yeah, that advocacy that you're talking about is something that I think is really fundamental, even in our culture with the type of government that we have. I tell people all the time in my district, like, you don't need, somebody else is going to stand here in 8 years or whatever. You will have another senator, but what I want you to understand in my tenure is how to empower you to be an advocate for what our community needs. And oftentimes we put elected officials up on a pedestal. I did this again, when I first started coming up here. I just thought, oh my gosh, these guys have it all together. No, they're just regular people who love their community, just like was already mentioned. And they feel called to do something. Hopefully they feel called to do something to help make their community a better place. And so spot on with the comments that were already shared. I have a great working relationship with a lot of the people in my districts as far as some of the stuff that's going on in the down on Main Street, and in this effort to try to revitalize our local communities. I mean, Lori Hahn is in my district. I absolutely love the work that they are doing. And to personalize a little bit what has already been said, to personalize your message, we hear often as legislators a lot of statistics, but when you personalize it and say, this is the impact that our efforts are making, these are the stories, always, if you personalize it, it always makes an impact. It's so easy to remember those facts. And it's not, if you walk away, we listen to dozens of people every day. And so if you make it a personal thing, that's the thing that I'm going to remember. You brought me a story that I could share.
Great.
So
great. Thanks, Senator Carter. And a shout out to Lori Hahn, the Main Street Director in Joplin. Awesome. Thank you for that. We're now going to switch to the mayor. Gayla, I think you're going to introduce Mayor Haas.
Yes. And so before we do this introduction, we were in Jackson not very long ago, and the mayor was there for our training and help introduce the whole training. And so we just really appreciate Jackson and their commitment also to Missouri Main Street. So the mayor was elected in 2015. He worked for Bosch and Lomb for 31 years and studied at Southeast Missouri State University. Woohoo! We have a lot of people from there that is part of our group, so we're very appreciative to that. The mayor has been a huge supporter of the Main Street effort in Uptown Jackson since he was elected mayor. You will find some blanks for your audience. That is the population of Jackson. And what is one priority for Uptown you would like to see before the term expires in 2025? So we will discuss that.
Well, welcome, and I'm pleased to be here today, and have been. It was nice. I've been mayor 9 years, and the first year that I was mayor is when what we call our Uptown organization joined Main Street, and it's just been a great collaboration since then between the city, our Uptown group, and Main Street. I'll tell you just a little bit about Jackson. So we're in Southeast Missouri, about 100 miles south of St. Louis. We're twinned up. Our borders on our east side borders with Cape Girardeau, Missouri, who's on the river. And our population is around 15,000 people. We're the fastest growing community in Southeast Missouri. We're proud of that, 13% since the last census. Certainly a family-based city. We have a lot of families. We have a great school district based here in Jackson, as well as we have a large retiree group and people that actually retire here, but also move back here when they do retire. We're pleased to be the county seat of Cape Girardeau County. We work closely with our county commissioners, and certainly that's a big part of our community of having the Justice Center here, our jail center, and the rest of the county organization is based here in Cape Girardeau as well, in Jackson as well for Cape Girardeau County. We have a great park system in Jackson. We spend a lot of time making sure our quality of life is there. And, a little unique is that as a city, we do own all our utilities. So we have a lot of connection with our citizens, whether it's electric, water, sewer, trash pickup. Those are all operated by our 125 employees that we have within the city of Jackson. Personally, certainly I got involved after my retirement, and Susan and I, my wife, were both from Jackson. We left for my career, and then we came back after I retired, and it was an interest to serve, an interest to help Jackson grow, and really to use my background in business, and that's what I've been involved in mostly. I'm presently chairman of our county or regional economic development organization, CMO Ready, and we've been spending a lot of time, making the next step for that organization as well, and how that relates to the rest of the governments within our area. So a little bit about me and about our city, and we'll just turn it over to you to get into a discussion.
Great. Thank you, Senator Carter. We can see you now too, so your connection must be better. Hello, good morning. Thank you, Senator. Thank you, Mayor. Great introductions, and thank you for being here today. We're going to move into some Q&A that we've prepared based upon questions we've heard from communities as we work with them. And then feel free, participants, attendees, use the Q&A section to ask questions of both the mayor and the senator. I have one that we'll get to in just a second. But first, I wanted to ask Mayor Haas, a citizen or a constituent maybe has an idea, a project, or a concern. How do they engage with the city and bring that forward to you? What is the process in your area in working with the city if a citizen or a resident has a concern or problem or just want to talk about an idea?
Sure. Yeah, and I guess we try to operate within our city for want of a better word, an open door policy. But if somebody has some, they have several different ways. First, on our website, we have a section where you can just contact us, write an email, either to me, the Board of Aldermen, and so forth, and contact us that way and ask for a response. And then we'll recontact that back, either myself or whoever it's applied to from the standpoint of our city staff. Contact directs. Certainly we're a small town. We know everybody. It's as easy as coming to the office. Sometime I have office hours here. We certainly have a staff that's here all the time, and they can make contacts that way and set up an appointment. Is certainly an easy way to have those discussions. I encourage people, if they have a fairly substantial proposal or project that they'd like to talk, is to come and talk to the Board of Aldermen. Our meetings are twice, the first and third Mondays. We have a formal meeting, our agenda items at 6 o'clock. By between 6 and 7, we finish that up, and then we go into a study session. And we're open to anybody to schedule and put them on the agenda of our study session so that we can have a discussion and the person can really face to face and not just talk to me, but talk to all of our board at the same time, and our city staff that's there too. And I really encourage that type of communication if they'd like to, they have a proposal, something they want to see. So you have different variants, but I think the key for us is having an open door policy so that people have, different avenues.
Mayor, you're just not saying it. You all are actually doing it. And so being able to come forward at a city council meeting, that is just amazing. So many council meetings that we attend is very rigid, very rehearsed. You have to ask for permission to come and present, and normally those, can be denied. So that's great to hear, Mayor.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
mean, that's our study session. We certainly like to get you on the agenda, but that section of and we have an agenda item, non-agenda citizen input, and that's called out at every meeting. And if there's somebody here that wants to talk, they certainly can talk.
And I was going to throw in, Gayla, too, that I've actually presented before the Jackson City Council many times in our role. The Main Street program asks us to come and present with them. And while it can be very intimidating to think about going and presenting to a city council, every experience when I've presented, like the senator said, it's people just like us. And, they ask good questions, very welcoming. Thank you for the information. We're glad that you did this and are helping. And so I think the fear of it is more intimidating than actually doing the presentation to the council.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you, Mayor. All right, Senator, this one's for you. Okay, someone has an idea or project, kind of similar to what we were just talking with the mayor. How do they present that idea to you, or are you wanting to be fully baked or developed before they approach you, or can it be something that they just come and have a conversation?
Senator, I'm sorry, you're on mute still.
That's a great question. I think for me, I think it's advantageous to, I think it depends on the elected official. Especially if you have somewhat of a relationship with them, here's where I see the advantage of coming to them when it's newly formed, is that sometimes that senator or that representative elected official can help connect some dots and help you bridge some relationship gaps that you might have in implementing that program. But on the other hand, if it's something that's new and you don't have a great relationship with that elected official, certainly bringing it in and proposing it, even when you're quite not sure how all of it works out or will work out, that works too. I think the main thing you're trying to do is show that you're looking for solutions. My husband says this all the time, and he says, everybody can show up with a complaint. It's rare that somebody shows up with a complaint that has a solution. And so if you're coming to an elected official and you see a problem or an issue or something that you're trying to solve, and you come in and say, look, we've noticed this, this, and this, here's some potential ideas that we have to share that we think might be a potential solution. That's like gold to somebody who's an elected official, right?
Yes,
Because we have so many people come to us with problems that we're also trying to, okay, how do we mitigate this? So to come with some of the solutions is gold.
Yeah.
Great.
All right, Senator,
Great.
thank you so much. And you're right. I mean, even within all of our works, we're always about, okay, that is great, but are you going to be part of the solution? Are you going to help me, than just complain?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. Senator, we're going to stay with you for one more question related to how to communicate with somebody at the state level, whether it be a senator or a legislator. There's lots of means to do that. Kelly talked a little bit from the federal level, how, if you send an official letter, it's going to take a while to get to that person. How do you prefer that folks communicate with you? Is it email? Is it a phone call to you or the office, mail, voicemail? What's the best way to reach out to a legislator at the state level?
I think depending on, again, the process that you're in with that elected official makes sense. If you have a good relationship with them yet, certainly reaching out to the office via phone message is a lot easier to connect with that elected official. We get thousands of emails every day. So sometimes just wading through them to actually identify which ones are the ones that we want, that we can actually do something about and build a relationship with that just takes time. So if you're wanting to really connect quickly, certainly picking up the phone, talking to the staff is the preferred way of doing. You have, excuse me, sorry, I'm getting another call. Once you have that connection and that relationship built, then like Lori, for her to send me an email to my Senate email, I'm watching for some of those because I have a relationship. I know the programs that she's working on. And so because I have that relationship, again, I can see that it's from Lori. I know what she's doing. I know what she's working on. I'm an equal partner with that. And so that kind of goes to the top of the email chain. But
Great.
even certainly a text. I mean, Lori has my cell phone number. I know that she's very careful to not abuse that. So we have to be conscientious of that. There are some days that I get 40 or 50 text messages, and it takes a while to even respond to those. But if it's an emergency, I hope she would know that I would answer quickly.
And just for clarification, Senator, you guys are only in Jeff City for a certain period of time, but you always have staff in your office in Jeff City, isn't that correct?
I'm sorry, I lost you. What was that?
Sorry. Yes, you guys as legislators in the Jeff City, you're not there all year long, but you do have staff in your office all year long. Is that correct? Yeah.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Great. Great. Thank you, Senator.
Yes.
They might not be in office, but they're always on.
Certainly in Missouri, if you're talking Missouri specifically, January to May, it's very difficult. It's because you're working on legislation. There's a lot going on. Your office, it's constantly turning, but definitely easier to build relationships after May.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're trying to, like, I've done tours with some of the people downtown in my area. I love that kind of stuff, and it helps me to understand again the programs and the processes and what it is that they're doing, and it's boots on the ground, right? So that I can come back up here, and when she brings something, hey, this is the next project we're working on, that I'm like, oh, I've been there, I've seen that. So it makes a personal connection to it. It's much easier. So Missouri specific, I mean, definitely come up, but and bring those sheets of information or whatever. But if you don't have a really great relationship yet, working relationship with your legislator, then to do that right after May is a peak time to do it.
Well, and this might be a good time to just transition. We have another question related to, let's say, and we'll ask this to both of you. We'll start with the senator, is, a Main Street program wants to invite you to their district or wants to invite you to an event or a parade. So realizing, what you just explained, that from January through May, it is just a very busy time. But maybe in those off months would be a better time to do that. How would you react to that, Senator, if somebody wants to have you come visit their district or participate in an event?
It's really difficult for me. My staff tells me all the time that I need to slow down a little bit, but I love where we live. I have a deep passion for our community. So just letting me know that there is something going on, even though I can't attend, helps me to be able to feel like I have a touch back with what's going on at home. And so please do invite, or just say, hey, FYI, I know you're busy, but this is something that's going on in our area, or in our city or down on Main Street. And that helps me to be able to say, hey, Lori, how did that go? Or, to those people that are putting it on. So don't be afraid to invite, but definitely January to May, it is more difficult. Okay.
And Mayor, what about for you?
Yeah, I think the key thing, and certainly invite, but I think giving us enough time, so that we can react, so we can arrange schedules. In some cases, you may want to take something else off and put this on as being more important. So having time to react is important. And quite honestly, personally, with me, I usually ask people, ask me directly, am I going to be there or not? Okay, so I kind of hate to go to events where so-and-so was going to be here, but they didn't show up. Well, that's, if I'd like to commit to being somewhere, and then it's on my calendar, and I'll do everything I can to be there. But make commit, or if I can't come, I'd rather say I can't come rather than be a maybe when the event happens.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that we're going through some of the questions that are coming through. Some of those are just really about Missouri Main Street and how to get involved, as well as questions for you all. So we'll move to another question. And again, this can be either of you all to answer. How important is it for you all to meet your other constituents and get into their towns and understand what their challenges are as well? Do you all do that as mayor? Do you go to other communities and see what's going on and work through that? And then Senator, how does that work for you all as well? I feel, as us working in over 50 communities and then having 150 communities that want to be part of Missouri Main Street, We see some of the same challenges across Missouri. So we're just interested in how you guys navigate that. Mayor, you want to start?
Sure. I do it on a couple levels. First, in Missouri, we have the Missouri Municipal League, which, 700 cities in Missouri belong to that. And they have, a legislation meeting in February in Jeff City. And then we have a Missouri-wide conference in September. But, working, that's probably the best way to communicate and get to know, city officials, mayors from across the state. That kind of relationship allows you to pick up the phone if you've got a question. Also, the MML itself is just a great conduit for information, of what's going on in the legislation, when it comes to lobbying as for. Within our little closer area, within our area here, we've got 4 cities: Scott City, Cape Girardeau, Jackson, and Perryville, all kind of within a 30-mile range. The 4 mayors have a lunch either once a month or once every 2 months. We just get together, no agenda, just talking about what's going on in our city, what's going on in our region. And we use the other organizations to, you do that too, such as our economic development organization. But, constant communications, same thing we do with our legislation. We invite them to luncheons, again, no agenda, just to discuss what's happening there. And we do that on pretty well on a monthly basis. There's some type of lunch that we get together to, to communicate what's happening and
Right.
share information.
Not living in our silos. That's great. All right, Senator, how about you?
So we are attempting to do the same thing. We had around Christmas time, we had just a jingle and a mingle is what we called it. And it was just a come and go with other elected officials and other invested members of the community, just to try to bring everybody in to say, okay, what's going on? It was really amazing because we had mayors from across the community in my district be able to meet for the first time. And they were the ones that were kind of having these side meetings while I was just there to facilitate. It was a great event. And so continuing to try to do that where people realize and know that you're not out of touch and that you really do care, and that it takes a community, right, to advocate for a community. And it's not the weight or the burden isn't, it's a team effort. So.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Senator.
Yes, thank you, Senator. And Mayor, we have just another minute or two. There's one question I'd like to get to, which raises an interesting question. I'll just ask the question, and either one of you can pick, or maybe this is a question for Kelly. Should we reach out to elected officials I'm assuming this person is with a nonprofit, where our nonprofit is located, their service area, or their residence of, I guess, where the office is of the nonprofit, or maybe it's the resident of the person reaching out, or are all of those important?
I think that's a great question for Kelly.
So trying to get to the bottom of the question, I mean, it depends also on the level that you're reaching out, right? So federal, state, local, there might be a little nuance to that. But I think, if you reach out to a federal office, sometimes they're going to ask for your residential zip code. They want to know who you are and where you as the individual are located. But you always want to center it in what your mission is of the organization that you're trying to serve. We do have Main Street programs that cross over to state districts, to districts. And so there are some nuance to how those maps are drawn. It's not a problem to reach out a little bit broader, but then you want to be conscientious. If I was a Main Street program located in Joplin, and because of committee relationships or other things, I felt like I needed to reach out to the senator who represents, and I'm sorry because I'm trying to get the geography correct, but St. Louis, right, which is not the same space. I want to be conscientious that I'm not stepping on the toes of those other organizations because they have relationships. So that's where you want to work within your network. Make sure that you're working with the other people who are also building those relationships so that you don't reach out and deliver a message that isn't completely in line with what other relationships folks have built.
Sure.
Right, Kelly.
Yep.
And just to cover a little bit about what we're levels here. All of us are, and all together we're going to make a difference. And even with National Main Street and Kelly's work, but we're working with her at Congress level. The door's wide open what we can change. Several years ago, we weren't receiving USDA monies to start our new programs. It was National that put us in contact with the federal people. And then they took notice we know them before we knew our local USDA. Then they opened the door for us and would sit down and have meetings. So many of you all have been through that community empowerment grant program. We were able to secure EDA funds, and that is really because of the relationship that we're all building at a federal level. So you guys, there is all layers of this, but if we can make a difference in all of those areas for Main Street, what an impact it will make for the state of Missouri. So I just want you all to realize that, again, there's just so many buckets that and different people that we're trying to build partnerships with that's going to make a huge difference to our communities. And we really appreciate the senator and her work. I know it's very, very hard, but it all comes from a passion, and you can just feel that by even talking to Senator Carter. And Mayor, the same way with you. The first time I met you, I knew that, you just have a love for Jackson, and we really, really appreciate that. And Kelly, keep us going strong at the federal level. We really appreciate everything that you're doing as well.
Yep. And I want to thank all the attendees for participating today. Of course, we've recorded this and we'll put it on our YouTube channel. And Senator Carter, we'll see you on January 23rd when we're at the Capitol with all of our various Main Street programs.
We're looking forward to it. We're office number 219, so looking forward to having you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Everybody have a great day. Thanks, Mayor. Thanks,
Thank
Senator.
you.
Thanks,
Thank
Kelly.
you.
Bye-bye.